When you are a Sangoma, your life ceases to be your own. When you are a Sangoma, you stop becoming an ordinary human being, but you become rather a lonely pilgrim traveling that strange grey road between the known and the little known, between the visible and the invisible, between the mysterious and the crushingly ordinary. And when I became a Sangoma, I started walking along this road. When you are a Sangoma, you do not look for trouble. No self-respecting Sangoma ever does. But trouble finds you. People come to your doorstep, bringing ordinary complaints with which you can deal. But they also sometimes bring strange mysteries to the doorstep of your life, mysteries that change your life forever. I remember my first case, which was to be one of several hundred to date, of the first person who was brought to me with an incredible story to tell. The person had been a schoolboy called Sipho. Sipho told us that he had been captured by strange creatures whom he called dolls. And these dolls had brought him to a strange place and had done strange things to him that had made him almost mad with terror and fear. And to support his story, Sipho showed us two strange injuries on his buttocks. These injuries were depressions in the young boy's flesh, as if flesh had been mysteriously sucked out by some means, leaving the skin intact but caved in to form a depression. I remember studying Sipho's injuries with great amazement. I had never seen anything like this in my life before. But I was to see many more in years to come. People who told a strange story of how they had been taken by strange creatures and cruelly tortured and molested, and then returned back to their homes as if nothing had happened. Some of these people had been kidnapped while going to work. Some of them had been kidnapped after many a drunken binge in a neighboring village or homestead. Some of these people had been abducted while carrying on with their daily duties in the veld. I remember a woman who had lost her job with a farmer who employed her because she had suddenly disappeared from the labor gang while they were out in the orchard reaping oranges, not far from the town of Zebediela in the Eastern Transvaal. The woman had disappeared for a number of days, and she returned with an unbelievable story to tell. She returned with her sanity almost lost and with a number of injuries identical to Sipho's in various parts of her body. And furthermore, this poor woman complained that she had been raped. And to support her story, when I asked a female Sangoma to examine her, the Sangoma found that the woman's female organ inside had been severely lacerated, as if some kind of instrument had been used on her. This woman also suffered from nose bleeding in one nostril only, and she was indeed in need of urgent help. And I thank God that I was able to help this woman and others who had come before and those who were to come after her. But I was always wondering exactly what it is that happens to these people and why it happens to them. I remember when the number of cases I dealt with reached close to 50, I began wondering, what's going on in this world? But I did not have to wonder long. I went to Rhodesia, as it was then called, in the year of our Lord, 1958. I stayed there until the end of 1959. And early in 1959, I went with a relative of mine, relative because his brother had married my sister. We went to the Inyangani Mountains, a range of mountains to the east of Rhodesia. These mountains are very ordinary mountains, but there is a brooding menace about them at certain times of the day. They are mediocre mountains, not as majestic as some of the great mountains I've seen in Africa in the course of my many travels. One day, I was with a relative of mine, and he told me that we must climb higher up the mountain slope to search for the herb for which our teacher, whose apprentices we were, had told us to find on the slopes of these mountains. I refused to go higher up the mountain because I was already suffering from a chest condition that made me lose my breath every time I tried to negotiate a mountain slope. So I stayed on the ground, and I went into dense bush in search of this herb. I saw a clump of this herb not far away, and I made a beeline towards it. I never reached it. A strange blue mist fell all around me. It was like a blue haze, a bright blue haze that seemed to fill the whole land all around me. For a few amazed moments, I looked at the landscape through this strange, shimmering blue haze. And what happened afterwards, I do not know. I regained consciousness to find myself lying upon what looked like a metal working table, a smooth table of grayish silvery metal, of the type that engineers and metal workers work upon. But this table was like no table I'd ever seen before. It was more like a counter, such as one would find in a supermarket, but it was of solid metal through and through. I was lying on top of this thing and I was naked. And the fact dully registered in my mind. It was as if I was under the influence of some kind of drug or spell, in that I observed all these things with a strange detachment. I was just lying there on the table, not moving a muscle. I was on my back. And then all around me was this strange haze, a turquoise blue haze, or a curtain of transparent turquoise blue material. I do not know. And beyond this haze, I dimly saw that I was inside a room that looked like a railway tunnel, a small half-round room which curved away towards an unseen corner. This room was so small and so low that although I am a short person, my head would have reached almost to the roof of this very confined space. And then, through that strange haze, I noticed many designs made in black upon certain parts of this room, if I may call it that. I even saw a door partly hidden by the curvature of the place in which I was. And there was something on that door, decorations or writing done in black against the silvery metal. And then, through the haze, I saw things moving. They looked like dolls. They looked so incredible that I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My mind faintly registered the spectacle. I wasn't even scared, just mildly surprised and stupefied. These things were moving towards me. There were 5 of them, and before I knew what was happening, one of them, the tallest and the largest by far, was very, very close to me. In fact, the damn thing, please forgive my word, was standing less than 8 inches away from me. It was short. It had a very large, round, hairless head. It had long black eyes, jet black eyes. It had small nostrils, no ears, and a slit of a mouth. Its neck was long, almost shaped like that of a crane. And the creature wore a garment which covered it from the soles of its feet right up to its neck. The garment reached up to the creature's wrists. Its hands were bare. The creature came towards me, and for a few moments we stared at each other, and I was conscious of a strange, revolting smell that emanated from the creature, a smell that somehow chilled the blood in my bones. I wanted to move, to run away, but my body would not obey the commandments or the commands of my mind. This creature was something to be feared, I sensed. There was something cold and unbelievably unfriendly in the creature's expression. It was a living thing, of that there wasn't the slightest doubt. It was human-shaped, but its face was utterly alien. For a moment we looked into each other's face, the creature and I, and then I noticed something. That the long black goggle-like things that seemed to cover the creature's eyes were really a kind of goggle. And behind the goggles, one could make out the creature's eyes, split pupilled and round. And I wasn't given enough time to dwell upon what I was seeing, as the other creatures came all around me. And the next moment, a terrible scream was torn out of my lips as a burning pain seared into my thigh. I turned my head, forcing it to turn, and I saw that one of the creatures had buried something that looked like a flexible cable in my left thigh, and the pain was horrible. And even now, I remember that and much more with a shudder. But the agony did not end there, because the next thing that happened was that one of the creatures, a creature which looked very strange and unbelievably old, I noticed that its skin was peeling here and there, exposing a sort of a pinkish underlayer. There were peels of skin around the creature's mouth, near its left temple, and very close to where its ear should have been if it had been a human being. This creature pushed something into my nose, my right nostril, and there was a burst of pain that was so excruciating that I don't know whether I screamed or not. It was a maelstrom of agony. It was a storm of anguish. After that, my body just became numb. I could feel the creatures doing more painful things in parts of my body. They drained something from my organ of manhood, subjecting me to a deep feeling of horror, shame, and terror. And they did all this with a purposefulness that was almost blood-chilling. And I remember screaming and crying out for my mother. And the creatures didn't care what I was saying. They took absolutely no notice of what I was undergoing. To them, it was as if they were doing a job, like surgeons dissecting an ugly monstrosity on some table. To them, it was a duty of some kind, a duty which was attended by a desperation and an efficiency that was literally out of this world. I remember, after what seemed like an eternity of hell and pain, I remember that the leading creature placed its hand upon my mouth petting my open, screaming lips again and again, none too gently, as if to say, please shut up, you stupid ape. Can't you see we are busy? There was, if I could have read only a trace of expression or compassion in those cold, grayish-blue alien faces, I would have understood. But their faces were totally unreadable, and they said nothing. They only seemed to communicate with each other in a series of squeaks and rattling sound and hisses. I remember that in the group there was one of them which took my attention more than all the rest. This creature was wearing a grey silvery garment. But that was not all. It was also wearing a recognizable cap with a visor, a cap of the type that schoolboys used to wear in some schools, a round cap with a little peak like a duck's beak in front. I noticed this and it amazed me. What were these creatures? And when the tallest of the creatures finished petting my mouth, I assumed stupidly that my agony was over, but it was not. Because when human beings or strange creatures like those are busy torturing you, you are in extreme pain. Your pain knows no description. You cannot run. You are utterly captive and helpless. And these things are doing to you exactly as they wish. But when they stop torturing you, when they stop plunging things into your body, things that you don't even understand, many times I wanted the creatures to tell me what they were torturing me for. What had I done? But they did not even say a word. They did not even make a single recognizable gesture of apology to me. They didn't. They just went about whatever they were doing. These creatures looked exactly like this. They are the type of alien creature that has been known and feared throughout Africa for generations. This creature is about 3 feet tall. It looks for all the world like a child who is on the last stages of dying of malnutrition. It looks exactly like this, and it has a strange smell which once you smell it, you shall never forget it. This creature is known by the Zulu-speaking people of South Africa as a Matintana. The word Matintana comes from the verb ntinda, which means to abuse, to fiddle with, and to torture by interfering with the victim's genitals and other private parts. This is an exact description of the Matintana. It does exactly that. For hundreds of years, even mighty nations such as the Zulus, even powerful warrior nations such as the Botswanas and Xhosas lived in mortal fear of these creatures. Whenever a Zulu army went out on the warpath, Zulu warriors used to wear a strange cup-like device over their private parts under their loinskins. This cup-like device was very dangerous to a warrior in the heat of battle because it sometimes could get undone and get between the warrior's thighs, and cause him to stumble and fall, and so to get killed by the enemy. But the Zulus were so afraid of having their semen stolen by the Matintana that they found this type of inconvenience acceptable, rather than that they should face the trauma of having things done to them by these beings. There is a huge tradition involving the Matintana, the tormentors of the human race. But let me tell you this. Matintanas are so real that you actually can eat one. And Zulus sometimes crack a joke. When you have done a Zulu a very great favor, the Zulu will sometimes say to you, "My friend, I don't know how to thank you. I should rather slaughter a Matintana in your honor." Now, that strange statement hides an actual practice which is still being carried on in many parts of Southern Africa today. If a Sangoma finds a dead Matintana in the bush, that Sangoma must invite his or her closest friends to a ritual feast on the dried flesh of this little monstrosity. And people who have eaten the flesh of a Matintana become inseparable friends afterwards. The creature's flesh is utterly tasteless. It tastes for all the world like soft cardboard to which a little salt has been added. And if you have ingested the creature's flesh, then you must prepare yourself for great sickness. A terrible rash will erupt all over your body. Your breathing will be hampered. Your heart will beat with great difficulty. And for a few hours or 2 or 3 days, you will suffer unbelievable agony with your skin itching, numb, and burning as if you have caught smallpox. And you will come within inches of death itself, an agonizing death. And after that, you will be overcome by an unbelievable ecstasy, an ecstasy that no words of mine can describe. My friends, there are very great mysteries in Africa, and they are still there. They are still going on even as I speak to you. I will not dwell on this subject much longer, but let me tell you this, that after the Matintana had finished torturing me, I assumed that my agony was at an end, but I was wrong. Because out of somewhere there came a very, very strange creature. A creature which shocked me all the more because it was amazingly human. The creature looked like a woman, a woman of very short stature, a woman with unnaturally golden hair, hair which looked as if it was made of fine metal wire. This woman had designs or tattoos of some kind on her forehead and on her chin and just below her neck. This woman looked like a white woman. And this is what I found particularly frightening. And I would rather not tell you what happened then. Let me accept this, that it was a trauma that even now has never been expunged from my soul. I was later to learn that this creature is the type of creature known by the Zulus as Ingupusana. The creature's features are strangely out of shape and ridiculous. Some types don't even have eyebrows above their heads, but their eyes are always piercingly blue. Their eyes never blink for one moment, and although its hair is a metallic gold on its head, the hair in its armpits and other parts is a bright, shining metallic red. I leave to your imagination to work out what this creature did to me. And please remember that those were the days in South Africa when apartheid was still ruling supreme. And I walked the valleys of South Africa afterwards, haunted by a double fear. The fear of the Matintana and also the fear of being arrested by the police for having broken a strange law which was in force at that time. Let me tell you that after this strange, disproportionately shaped creature, a creature with an unnaturally long thorax and strangely short legs and long arms, I was forced off the table by the Matintana and taken to see a number of things which even now make no sense to me. More than 4 decades ago, I saw creatures in what appeared to be glass jars, little Matintana swimming like ugly little frogs inside pinkish fluid. I saw other things that I cannot even pretend to understand or to describe. And then I saw in another place a number of people, yellow people, black people, and white people, undergoing the same brutal torture that I had undergone. But then one of the people was a man. I came so close to him as to look down into his agonized face. He looked up at me and I looked up at him. The man was a white man. And some years later, round about 1963, I was walking the streets of Johannesburg when a white man suddenly grabbed me by the shoulder. I thought I was being arrested. The white man said, "Hey, stop you." I stopped. He said, "Do you speak English?" I said, yes, boss, I speak English. And then he said, where the fucking hell did I see you before? Where did I see you before? Where? I said, I don't know, boss. He said, listen, don't bullshit me, man. Where did I see you before? I said, I don't know. He said, were you in Rhodesia? I said, many times, boss. And then he looked at me for a long time, his lips trembling. It was obvious that the man was on the very brink of total insanity. There was a wild look in his grey eyes that chilled me to the core of my soul. His lower lip was trembling and there was spittle on it. And then he pushed me away. And as he walked away, he said, stupid kafir, we were in hell together. Those words shall ring in my mind for as long as I live. Stupid kafir, we were in hell together. On the corner of Elof and Marshall Street, in the year of our Lord, 1963. The white man recognized me just as I recognized him. We were in hell together. It was one of the strangest events of my life, but many more were to follow. After I had been released from my strange imprisonment and torture, when I found myself back in the bush, I noticed two amazing things. One, that I was barefooted. I noticed, two, that my clothes were back on my body again, but they were torn and dirty, and they smelt of the interior of the place in which the Matintana had been torturing me. I remember that my brown trousers was severely torn at the knee and in over the left buttock. My khaki shirt was also torn, hanging almost in tatters from my body. I remember that I painfully made my way along a dusty path, hoping that it would lead me to a village or a kraal. I did not know who I was and where I had come from. My memory was a blank. And as I walked along that path, memory slowly returned. I was Credo Motwa from South Africa. I was in the land called Rhodesia. And even as I walked painfully hobbling, I came in sight of a homestead, two rondavels, and a square building of mud. And as I approached the homestead, two dogs came at me like thunderbolts. One grabbed my left leg and tore my trousers with one bite of its jaws. I fell to the ground and feebly tried to fight off the dogs, but the animals appeared bent upon murdering me, and I did not wonder, because I smelled strange. A strange alien smell hung over my entire body. I was grey and ashen, as if I had rolled in an ash heap for a number of days. I stank and I was very dirty. My identity documents were gone from my pocket, and so were the keys that I always kept in my pocket. People came out to drive away the dogs, and one of the people, a man, recognized me, and he escorted me towards a distant village where he had seen me living. It was the home of my teacher, a lady of the Makaranga tribe. The man asked me where I had been. I said I did not know. The man told me that I had been missing for 3 days, if not more, and that the tribal police had found my boots on the mountain slope, but the boots had not been unlaced. It was as if some force had sucked me out of both my boots and socks, leaving the footwear and the socks standing there in the veld. It was this that had shocked the denizens of the villages. When I returned to my teacher's home, once more every dog made for me. One actually gave me a painful bite on my right calf, on the calf of my right leg. And then people ran away, some of them, at the sight of me. And it was only my teacher, Mrs. Moyo, who had the presence of mind to take me into one of her huts to have me bathed for over 2 hours in soap and warm water, to remove the layers of dirt that now covered my body, and also to remove the stench that hung over my whole person. I was smeared with brilliantine from head to foot in order to kill the awful alien odor that hung over me. And I got sick for 2 whole years, hovering on the brink of madness. Such was the trauma. After my horrible experience, I was to meet other people who had undergone similar experiences. Black men and black women who had been through hell and back, and who carried marks as proof of their awesome experience, who carried injuries to testify that the words they were talking were true. Women got mysteriously impregnated and then mysteriously aborted also. People were captured again and again and yet again. And in me also, storms were brewing. It appeared as if these Matintana creatures were bent upon following me through wherever I went. I could say more, but I leave that for others to tell when I'm gone from this earth. But let me tell you this, that there is no glory, there is no glamour, there is no sanctity in being captured and tortured by a Matintana. People who say that these creatures speak to their victims telepathically are telling cheap lies. These creatures do not talk to you. Strange pictures are instilled into your mind. Pictures of the end of the world. Pictures of seas polluted almost to an inky blackness, where not a fish nor a bird is to be seen. Pictures of a landscape turned dry and dead, with the trees forever frozen, leafless and dead, on a landscape which is as hard as granite. Pictures of poisonous dark yellow clouds swimming across the blue and poisoned skies. Pictures of mountains denuded of all life. Pictures of dust swelling where green things bloomed centuries before. When you have been captured by the Matinda, you want to find out exactly why this happened to you. As a traditional African, I am taught to accept this, to only know that for some reason I had been chosen by these godlike creatures for some kind of sacrifice. But I refuse to accept this. And so I went from people to people, from group to group, trying to find comfort, hoping to find sense out of something that really made no sense. And then one day, I was fortunate enough to correspond with a white lady called Elizabeth Clara, who went a long way in trying to make me understand what had happened to me. But my mind was still not satisfied, and it still is not satisfied. I want to know the reason behind the things that the Matindanes do. I am not one of those who believes that these Matindanes are experimenting with us. There is too much purposefulness, too much efficiency behind the whole thing. These creatures are harvesting us for some reason. And they are harvesting not only human beings but also animals as well, because they often molest and mutilate animals in the African bush. And each animal that has been molested and killed by the Matindane is known by a number of facts. One, the animal never rots in the bush as it lies dead. It simply dries up as hard as a board. The many scavengers, the crows, the vultures, and other carnivores that devour dead things in the African bush never touch an animal, whether wild or domestic, which has been killed by the Matinda. They never do. And if you observe the carcass of such an animal on a dark and moonless night, you will notice that in many parts of it, there is a strange, eerie glow, clearly recognizable in the starlight. What it all means, I do not know. All I do know is that somewhere out there, there are creatures of an extremely high intelligence, creatures that have haunted the lives of our remote ancestors for hundreds, if not thousands of years, creatures that still haunt our lives at this day and this hour. My friends, as a result of several years of experience, I would like to advance this argument. The Matindane creatures do not come from any star or star system in space. I say that these creatures come from our future. Why do I say so? because this creature arrives on Earth completely protected by a helmet and a suit of what looks like metal, flexible metal of some kind. The creature's hands, feet, and head are completely protected against our Earth's atmosphere. So is the ngadla here. It is completely sheathed in heavy metal. But with the Matintana, the story is different. Matintanas have been seen out in the open many times, their heads completely bare and their hands bare to the wrist, completely unprotected by any material or metal whatsoever. These creatures walk through our world as if they own it, a world in which there are so many poisonous substances. You will find Matintanas bareheaded, their hands completely uncovered, in a world where logically they should be covered from head to foot. These creatures, furthermore, are capable of impregnating earth women. They seek fluids and flesh from us human beings. If these creatures were a species of creatures from some far planet, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't be able to impregnate our women. They wouldn't be able to do what they are doing to us. These are our descendants. And when you have been worked over by them, you will understand that what they are doing to you, they do it with angry consciences. They are taking revenge upon us for what we have done to our future a few thousand years from now. And I'm firmly convinced of this, and all things that have happened to me since that terrible day have served to confirm that these are our descendants, not aliens from some far galaxy. No,